Nikunj, since you've been following IPL more this time than any of us, he says, I'll be back.
Yep.
Like Arnold Schwarzenegger.
I'll be back, and that's Dhoni for you. You know, I mean, just if you have to draw a parallel, CSK and Indian markets, well, there is a parallel, which is that form is temporary, class is permanent, right? That's what happened with Indian markets in 2022, which is that we went through a bad form because foreign institutional investors were selling, there were inflation concerns, there were valuation concerns. But the class is that the economy is growing. It is growing at a rapid pace. We are the envy of the world right now. Inflation has peaked out. Valuations are not that attractive. You know, the finance minister was in town last evening, and you know, there was a small editors conference where we got a window from her, and the way things are progressing in terms of what the economic assumptions were, how inflation has come down, how forex reserve has stabilized on a macro front. You know, she was not worried. She was mighty excited. She was mighty excited. And then again, you know, every time when you meet anybody, a senior government minister, you would always like to understand that, okay, elections around the corner, what is going to be the policy given that Karnataka, they've had a setback. And she was absolutely clear that there is going to be no change in terms of government policy, and you cannot compare state elections with what the central elections are.
Okay, looking at the trader's screen then this morning, there were no US equity markets overnight, so it's pretty flat across the global screen. Net flows continue to be positive. It was a rip-roaring buy figure from the FIIs yesterday as well, which, by the way, we managed to clock a fresh high on the Nifty Bank and now closing in on a fresh all-time high on the Nifty as well. And the F&O activity continues with a fresh long bias. So I don't think, looking at the screen right now, there's any reason to complain.
Yeah, so the action now shifts from Bank Nifty to the Nifty.
Yeah.
You know, the Bank Nifty has made a new all-time high. When will Nifty make a new all-time high? And frankly, that's not like that is not like a distance away. If anyone is making an assumption that Nifty sooner than later will be making a new high, I think that's a very fair assumption to make, because the setup or the setting on the table is favoring that. See, what really matters in the short term? Sentiment and direction. The sentiment is bullish and the momentum is strong. Flows are easy to understand, which is that foreign institutional investors are buying, domestic institutional investors are not selling. So right now there are no large institutional sellers in the market. And third is the macro and the earnings. And macros have stabilized, earnings are looking better. Now you may argue and say that what is next in the month of June and what will take markets higher from here convincingly. I think right now there are no triggers in the system, so markets would be moving higher because of liquidity and also the re-rating which is happening in India. And I think that is not over yet. So there is no point in preempting a fall. There is no point in trying to call a market top. There is no point in trying to assume that this is it in terms of the summer rally of 2023. We must recognize that these rallies are very sharp, and they may extend for a couple of weeks and for a few months before they peak out. See, on every front, you know, Aisha, all the concerns are simply getting addressed. Monsoon, looks like we are in for a normal monsoon. Adani, sell-off, that's got addressed. Inflation concern, interest rate. There are a lot of factors which, let's say, 3 months ago were muddling us back. You know, the water was looking very muddy. The water was looking very turbulent. I think now the water is clear, and within that, if you're planning to sail, well, summer is the time to sail.
But Nikunj, having said that, despite the fact that, you know, we're talking about all-time highs at a time like this, a lot of the heavyweights are underperforming. For instance, from the 1st of December, Reliance Industries down about 8%, HDFC Bank flat, Infi, TCS, etc. Now
that's the tricky part. You know, Avan, if you frankly add up the weightage of a Reliance, HDFC Bank and Infosys, it's about 20%. 20% makes it about, the 20% weightage. That's about 1/5 of the Nifty, which frankly has not participated when markets are at an all-time high. And you know, I can throw in State Bank of India in that as well and talk about another banking heavyweight which has just not participated. So it's interesting that Nifty has come back to an all-time high, or almost to an all-time high, without Reliance, without HDFC Bank and without Infosys. I would look at this as an opportunity rather than as a concern, because when when flows are so strong, this kind of a stark underperformance is unlikely to continue, because a lot of flows which come into India are also marked via the ETFs, which essentially map the benchmark. Since we are in a bullish group, since we are in economic recovery space, Infosys has sold off, HDFC Bank concerns are getting HDFC and HDFC Bank merger concerns are getting addressed. Somewhere Reliance, I think, has got things going in the right direction for the business cycle per se, as they're nearing the end of the capex cycle. I think the markets will recognize that. I don't see a problem with these four stocks that why they should underperform. I think it's just that lion amount of money is moved into an ITC, or lion amount of money is moved into some other sectors.
So not looking at it as a concern when it comes to some of those large caps. But let's talk about the other asset classes as well, and put the spotlight on the rupee to the US dollar, as well as the Bitcoin trend against the US dollar. And yes, as we have seen, the prevailing strength in the US dollar, that potentially could continue to keep the rupee lower, as right now we are hovering at those levels of about 81, 82 to the greenback. And you've also got cryptocurrency or the Bitcoin prices, they have risen above 27,900. Clearly, it's also optimism around the US debt ceiling deal that seems to be fueling that move, Nikunj.
Yeah, this is a bit of a concern if you frankly ask me, that ideally the rupee should have strengthened much more. Look, it is not at an all-time low. That's fair. But, with this kind of flows which are coming back from the FII frontier, FDI deals are still on a daily basis, things are getting stitched up even in the PE market. I was hoping that the rupee would be closer to 80.5 rather than 81.2. So the dollar index is also strengthening. It's not at 101, it's now 104, 105. It's, nearing 104, 105. So that becomes this, that becomes this fly in the ointment, or if I may use the word chink in the armor, which is that crude is down, but on the currency front, given where the dollar index is, the near-term positioning of the market, if anything has to really, cause that selling reversal, I think it would perhaps be the dollar index and what's happening there.
But the other important and very important factor for our markets, Nikunj, is also crude, right? What's that construct looking like?
So, Aisha, the natural direction of crude is looking weak. And you just think through it, that OPEC has actually cut production. And if OPEC has cut production, despite that, the demand actually for crude has not come back. We are entering into the summer month, and in the summer month, typically, you will actually see a decline in the crude demand. That is how historically things have moved. We are reaching that period where the crude demand globally actually should come down. The China consumption has not been as large as what everybody anticipated and expected. And when it comes to India, frankly, this war has been a blessing in the disguise indirectly, because we were able to buy cheap crude from Russia, and that rupee trade actually has worked like a charm for India. So India actually has benefited disproportionately at a time when world was buying crude at higher levels. India was getting at a discount, largely because of the foreign relationships or the kind of gateway which was opened with Russia. Now I think, Aisha, the natural direction for crude is lower. Crude is a function of demand. Demand is going to be significantly lower. Crude is a function of where the future innovation is happening. It is moving towards solar. It is moving towards EV. So the direction demand for crude is lower. And you're reaching the threshold where OPEC also knows that beyond a point you cannot cut production, because if you keep on cutting production, it will impact your profitability. So Russia crude, which everyone thought will be off the market, it is actually coming to a country like India. OPEC, even though they claimed that demand has normalized, it actually is not, because if they had to, then why have they cut production? So I think directionally, crude is weak. Sunil Singhania spoke about levels of 65, 70. Chris Wood is of the view that, look, I got crude called wrong. In fact, crude should be lower. The swing factor is still China, and the Chinese demand is not as strong as what everybody thought. I think it was your forward on one of the WhatsApp groups which said that there is a new virus variant which has come to China. Yeah. Now you think about it. Every time we think China is coming back, something happens there.
Yeah, turning out to be a bit of a black hole, right? But it is